Aaron Schwartz was a coder, a political activist, and an internet freedom fighter, amongst many other things.
His resume included co-authoring RSS 1.0 at the age of 14, co-founding Creative Commons, co-founding Demand Progress, and being a member of the Harvard University Ethics Center Lab.
He helped organize the successful campaign against the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA, which sought to monitor the internet for copyright violations and shut websites down.
The whole premise of our constitutional rights is that they're freedoms that are so important to us that, yes, we take risks, sometimes physical risks, to protect them. I mean, you know, we have a whole system of trials and stuff. Would we be safer if we could just throw people in jail randomly? Probably a little bit, but that's not a kind of country I would want to live in.
The 26-year-old took his own life last Friday.
And some people suggest that he committed suicide because the state of Massachusetts was overzealously prosecuting him.
He faced the possibility of $4 million in fines and more than 50 years in prison.
My God, what did he do to deserve that kind of punishment?
All this for illegally downloading academic documents.
Let me give you a sense of perspective. Threatening the president, my God, that's really serious, right? That can get up to 5 years in prison. Knowingly spreading AIDS, maximum of 10 years in prison. Well, come on, selling child pornography, right? That's got to be much worse. Maximum of 20 years in prison. Selling slaves, just that act, maximum of 20 years in prison. Bank robbery, 20 years. Armed bank robbery, maximum of 25 years in prison. Helping terrorists develop a nuclear weapon, well, that's got to be more, right? Wrong. 20 years in prison. 20 years in prison for helping Al-Qaeda develop a nuclear weapon. But what Aaron Schwartz did, face up to 50 years in prison. Now, I know it's multiple counts, but this is the trick that they always do. Oh, well, that one time that I think you were hacking in, that's a count. And the other time that was like 3.5 minutes later, that's another count, and that's another count. And we add all these together and we get 50 years. Why? We want to intimidate you, we want to bully you, we want to pressure you, we want to break you. It is grotesque.
Schwartz was, quote, driven to the edge by what a decent society would only call bullying.
The Archive Network, which stood to be harmed the most, declined to press charges.
They said, we will not even pursue civil charges. It's not that big a deal. It's not that important.
Nonetheless, the government proceeded.
There was nobody hurt by these actions, right? And to really see the federal government and prosecutors go after it so aggressively, to throw the book at someone like that, just, you know, really makes you question some of the priorities.
It really looks like the prosecutors were acting not out of a sense of justice or responding to harm, but as if they have a vendetta or they're making an example.
I mean, I can't even imagine how scary and terrible that must be to have your government hell-bent on putting you in a cage for 30 years for downloading some PDFs.
They say our interpretation of this law is that if you violate the terms of service of anything that you have a contract with, we can put you in jail. It's a felony. Do you know the government's used this in the past? There was a case of the woman who created a fake account on MySpace. Nobody was on her side. She was bullying a young girl, etc. But the actual charge that they went after her is the same one they were going using Schwartz. They're saying that creating a fake profile on MySpace was a felony because it violated the terms of service of MySpace. A felony. Who hasn't violated terms of service of the hundreds of things you've signed up to online? Are you positive you haven't violated any of them? See, what it allows the government to do is selective prosecution. Since the law is so broad, they selectively prosecute the people they don't like. One of the things that he was charged with was wire fraud. You know who was not charged with wire fraud? HSBC, which did wire fraud, money laundering, which the government says they did, with the largest drug cartels in the world, and with Al-Qaeda, and with Iran. For that, they faced a fine, but the prosecution, the Justice Department, that's so concerned about Aaron Schwartz, came out and said, oh, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do if we prosecuted any of those banking executives. It might endanger the bank, which might endanger the global economy. So you can do wire fraud with the largest drug cartels and terrorists in the world, but don't you dare violate a term of service, because then the government will come to get you, because you are dangerous.
I think this is one of the underlying problems, is that you have this law that was passed in the 1980s.
The system of laws that were, architected for the analog world, written in the 1970s, were literally.
There are gray-haired lawmakers in corporate suits writing laws that no longer make sense, given how the vast majority of this new generation actually uses the internet. And arguably, we're nearing a tipping point in which this disconnect will become untenable. Rather than cede ground in this upcoming struggle, powers that be wanted to squash the struggle from the get-go by making an example of error. Despite it being a victimless crime, and JSOR itself settling the matter with Aaron. The Department of Justice threw the book at him. A harsher punishment than most killers, bank robbers, child pornographers, or even terrorist sympathizers get. Aaron was looking at the very real possibility of spending much of the rest of his life in prison.
You know what's criminal? What our government is doing to its citizens. That's what's criminal.
Aaron was an activist, not a murderer. The punishment for his crime should have reflected that reality, but it didn't. Instead, Aaron was dogged to death by an overzealous Justice Department that targets activists and whistleblowers with all its fury, while turning a blind eye to actual criminals, thieves and murderers on Wall Street and in corporate America. This is the same sort of prosecutorial overreach we're now getting used to in a nation that more and more resembles a police state.
It really shouldn't take the death of a 26-year-old man to get people to analyze what is wrong with computer laws in this country.
And his death is not going unnoticed. The hacker group Anonymous claims to have taken over the website for MIT to honor Schwartz.
The Anonymous group also knocked the website for the U.S. Department of Justice offline. The group's message called the prosecution of Schwartz a grotesque miscarriage of justice and a distorted and perverse shadow of the justice that Aaron died fighting for.
Adding, we call for this tragedy to be a basis for a renewed and unwavering commitment to a free and unfettered internet, spared from censorship, with equality of access and franchise for all.
Yeah, and they put up a message out there, calling for the reform of computer crime laws. They're definitely not the only ones. In the wake of Aaron Schwartz's death, let's fix draconian computer crime law.
The Obama administration, of course, how do they respond to perhaps amending this law, which is what everybody's calling for today? Removing parts of the law could make it difficult or impossible to deter and punish serious threats from malicious insiders. So the answer is no. We will not amend the law. We will use it to crush our own citizens. That's the government we have.
Often out of the tragedy of death comes a spark that makes life better for the rest of us who are living. We saw that play out in Tunisia when a young street vendor, Mohamed Bouazizi, set himself on fire to protest the kleptocratic rule of his government and bring attention to the suffering of his generation. Within weeks, Tunisia's oppressive government was toppled by largely nonviolent actions of average citizens. So too were Egypt's and Libya's. The Arab Spring was born. Let's hope that Aaron's death will be just like his life, a spark for nonviolent, revolutionary change to bring about a more just, freer, and more equitable America.
The story of Aaron is only scratching the surface. We have seen how the law is wielded less and less to uphold justice, and more to exercise control, authority and power in the interests of oppression or personal gain. As the ever-vigilant watchdog of freedom throughout the world, Anonymous can no longer stand idly by lest another tragedy ensue. To that end, we have initiated Operation Last Resort in order to reform this erroneous system, but we are merely the catalyst. It is up to each and every one of you to guide it. For too long, citizens have felt helpless, hoping that the next elected official would be able to change the system for the better, incognizant to the fact that they are the knight in shining armor they've been waiting for all along. Only through your complacency, through your inaction, can the power to determine your own future be taken from you. Ubi Concordia, Ibi Victoria. Expect us, 2013.